The first sign that something was wrong came before I even heard the footsteps. It was the feeling that the house was holding its breath. I had imagined this night 1,000 times. The moment I would finally sit inside a home that belonged to me alone, a place I had earned through years of quiet effort no one had bothered to notice. I thought the world would stay still long enough for me to enjoy it. I should have known better. My name is Liana, and this is the night everything began to shift. I had closed on the house earlier that afternoon. The keys were warm in my palm as I walked through the rooms, sunlight stretching across bare floors. I was 29, successful in ways I rarely talked about, careful with every dollar, determined to never need anyone. Buying a house was supposed to be my declaration that I had finally built a life that could not be taken from me. I let myself imagine a quiet future inside these walls, imagining coffee in the mornings, soft lamps in the evenings, and no one telling me how I should live. The idea was so bright it felt fragile. By the time night settled in, I had nothing unpacked except a blanket, a pillow, and a small bag of takeout. The living room was empty, but it felt full of possibility. I sat cross-legged on the floor, eating slowly, letting the warm peace of the moment sink into my bones. I planned to sleep here even without furniture, wanting the first night to be mine. The silence was gentle, the kind that eases the mind. Then the front lock clicked, a sound so small it barely belonged in the real world, yet it cut straight through my chest. I froze, listening to the metal rotate, to the door push open, to voices speaking in low tones as if entering a space that already belonged to them. My mother's boyfriend walked in first, shoulders wide, chin lifted, eyes scanning the room like a king surveying his new territory. My mother followed a few steps behind, her gaze sliding anywhere except to me. He did not greet me. He simply stepped further into the house and said the words that would split the night in two. "This place is really your mother's, kid. We are moving in." I stared at him, the takeout container still warm in my hands. At first I thought it had to be a joke, a terrible one, but he dropped a duffel bag on my pristine counter as if this had all been planned. My mother flinched at the sound but remained silent. He told me I was acting childish. He told me homes belonged to families, not to daughters who thought they could just run off and buy things on their own. He told me the house was hers because she deserved it more. I felt the first deep crack in my calm, but I kept my voice steady. I took out my phone and called my realtor, pressing the speaker button so the words would fill the room. My mother's boyfriend smirked at first, leaning his elbows on the counter like he had already won whatever twisted argument he came here to start. But when the realtor answered and listed every detail that tied this home solely to me, his expression shifted slowly, the confidence draining from it grain by grain. My mother still refused to meet my eyes. He tried to argue, tried to twist his face into something that resembled authority, but the ground beneath him had already disappeared. I asked them both to leave. My mother murmured something about misunderstandings, but it was too late. They walked out without another word, though he made sure to slam the door with unnecessary force, a final attempt to assert control that no longer existed. The silence that followed was heavier than before. I stood in the center of my empty living room, the blanket still spread on the floor, the remains of my dinner cooling beside it. The night that should have been mine had been cracked open, revealing something hollow beneath it. This was not a simple intrusion. It was something planned, something entitled, something that had waited for an opening. I knew, standing there alone, that this was only the beginning. The air felt tight around me, the tension coiling like a wire pulled too far. I did not yet understand where the path led, only that I was already on it, and there was no turning back. I woke the next morning expecting to feel shaky or uncertain, but instead there was a strange clarity in me, a calm that felt sharper than anger. I made coffee in my empty kitchen and walked from room to room, touching the walls as if reminding myself that they were mine. I did not call my mother. I did not answer her texts. I did not reach out to the boyfriend who believed he could take what I had built. Silence became my shield, and I realized quickly how much it unsettled them. My mother started small, sending messages about how families should talk things through and how she felt hurt that I had spoken to her the way I did. I had not raised my voice once, but she pretended I had. When I did not respond, Her tone shifted from soft disappointment to passive sorrow, telling me I had broken her heart. Her boyfriend followed with his own attempts, claiming I owed respect, claiming I had embarrassed them by refusing to let them stay. The more they pushed, the less I felt anything. It was like someone had lowered a glass wall between us. I spent those days moving boxes into the house with steady patience. I hung shelves, arranged my dishes, dragged furniture through doorways with my sleeves rolled up and my jaw set. Every time my phone buzzed, I placed it face down. When I finally checked the messages, I read them slowly, cataloging every sentence. My mother wrote that she had sacrificed her life for me, that she deserved comfort now. Her boyfriend insisted that the law favored parents, that I had no legal right to shut them out of a home connected to my bloodline. He wanted me scared. He wanted me confused. He wanted me to believe he had more claim to my life than I did. I kept every message. Their words made my hands tremble sometimes, but I refused to let them see that. I did not respond with anger. I did not rise to any bait. I simply collected their threats like evidence placed neatly on a shelf. I understood something important in those quiet days. People like them do not expect resistance. They expect compliance. They expect tears and apologies. They expect the softer person to fold first. I had been that softer person for far too long. The turning point arrived in the form of a single message, one sent late at night when, I suspect, they assumed I would be too tired to think clearly. They told me they were coming back. They told me that family cannot be barred from a home. They told me that if I refused to open the door, they would find their own way in. The words were blunt, confident, dripping with entitlement. They believed completely in their power over me. Something in me shifted in that moment, a small click of finality, like a key turning in a lock. I did not respond to them. Instead, I reached out to a lawyer first thing in the morning. I explained everything in a steady voice, handing over screenshots, transcripts, and dates. I ordered cameras that afternoon, placing them carefully along the exterior of the house and at every entry point. I changed the locks even though the house was new. I made lists, planned contingencies, and moved with a quiet purpose that no one but me understood. They thought I was vulnerable. They thought I was sentimental. They thought the girl they had known would crumble under pressure. They did not see the version of me who had learned to survive alone. And as I tightened each piece of my preparation, I felt pressure building around me, slow and inevitable, like a storm drawing breath before the first crack of thunder. The attempt happened on a Wednesday morning, quiet and unannounced, slipping into my day like a knife sliding under fabric. I was at my desk at work, sipping coffee and answering emails, when my phone buzzed with a notification from the cameras I had installed only a week earlier. I tapped the screen expecting a delivery driver or a stray animal. Instead, I saw my mother standing on my porch, her boyfriend beside her, both of them staring directly at my front door as if waiting for it to bow to their will. At first they knocked lightly, almost politely, as though pretending this was a normal visit. Then the knocking grew harder. The boyfriend leaned in close to the camera, his mouth twisting into the same smirk he wore the night he tried to claim my home as his. My mother looked around nervously, but she did not leave. They tried the handle. When it did not budge, the boyfriend muttered something I could not hear. My mother nodded quickly, urging him on, and the two of them moved along the side of the house. I switched to the backyard camera and felt my stomach grow still. He was testing the windows, pressing the glass with the heel of his hand, trying to find a latch. My mother kept glancing toward the street, whispering at him to hurry. This entire scene played on my phone in real time, and instead of fear, instead of heartbreak, I felt an icy clarity settle in my chest. It was the kind of cold that stops trembling, the kind that prepares. I called the police before I even stood up from my desk. My voice was steady as I gave the address, explaining that two people were attempting to enter a private residence without permission. I stayed on the line until they confirmed an officer was on the way. Then I hung up and called my lawyer, forwarding the footage as I spoke. Every step felt deliberate, as if I had trained for this moment without knowing it. When the calls were done, I opened a new folder on my computer and named it Protection. I dragged the video files inside, then the screenshots, then the transcripts of every message they had sent. The empty folder I had created weeks ago was no longer empty. That evening, when I confronted them outside my mother's apartment, they acted confused at first, then amused. My mother laughed, saying families do not need permission to stop by. Her boyfriend added that I was always dramatic, always turning simple things into disasters. She told me to stop playing the victim. He told me I owed them more than a locked door. I stood there and said nothing. My silence stretched between us until their smirks faltered. They expected yelling, tears, maybe a shaky attempt at negotiation. Silence was something else entirely, a mirror forcing them to see themselves without distortion. Eventually, they walked away, muttering about ungrateful children and disrespect. I watched them go without speaking a single word. Later, I sat in my car outside my house with the engine off, my keys resting in my palm. The porch light glowed against the dark, steady and unmoving. I knew the next step would change everything, that whatever line they had crossed was no longer one I could pretend to ignore. The pressure inside me coiled tighter, waiting for the moment it would finally snap. I spent the next few days preparing in plain sight, letting everything look casual enough that no one watching closely would sense the shape of what was coming. I made phone calls during my lunch break with a calm, almost bored tone, discussing a contractor I wanted to schedule, a locksmith I planned to hire, and an insurance adjuster who needed to update my file. I kept my voice light and unhurried, describing repairs that did not exist and upgrades I had no intention of making. I wanted those words floating through the air, easy to misunderstand, easy to weaponize. My mother's boyfriend overheard one of those calls. I knew he did because she texted me only minutes later with a smug message about how I did not need to waste money changing locks on a house that belonged to the family. Her wording confirmed he had told her exactly what I wanted him to hear. He believed he still had time, still had an advantage, still had a right to enter my home if he moved fast enough. He thought I was scrambling. He thought I was nervous. He thought wrong. What he did not know was that the police had already flagged the address because of the attempted break-in. My lawyer had filed paperwork that morning, solidifying my right to exclusive possession of the property and documenting all prior harassment. The officers had my camera footage, my screenshots, my statements, and a clear understanding of the pattern forming. The house was no longer an unprotected building. It was a watched perimeter. He also did not know that I had informed the neighbors to call me if anyone approached the house while I was not home. I told them it was a safety concern, nothing more. Most nodded sympathetically. A few offered to check in if anything seemed off. I thanked them and kept to myself, maintaining the quiet, steady rhythm of someone who was simply settling into a new life. The night he returned was cool, the kind of quiet evening where every sound carries a little farther than normal. I was already waiting down the street in my parked car, the engine off, my hands resting on the steering wheel. I could see the faint glow of my porch light from where I sat. I watched the cameras from my phone, watching him move through the shadows with a confidence he had not earned. He did not see the officers positioned nearby. He did not see the unmarked car at the end of the block. He did not see the way every step he took was being recorded from 3 different angles. He walked straight to my door as if the house were simply waiting to welcome him in, as if all he needed to do was turn the handle and claim it. He believed he was clever. He believed he still had leverage. I let him believe it. The moment his foot touched the first board of the porch, the lights snapped on. Bright white, sudden, unforgiving. He froze in place, blinking rapidly. Then the officers stepped out from the side of the house, announcing his name with clear authority. He spun around, startled, searching for an escape that did not exist. My lawyer pulled up behind him, stepping out of her car with a folder tucked neatly under her arm. A second vehicle screeched to a stop, and my mother burst out of it, shouting that I was destroying the family, that I was cruel, that I was breaking her heart. Her voice cut through the night like a desperate blade, but it did not reach me. I stood at the edge of my yard in silence, watching everything unfold with a calm I had earned. The moment was precise, exact, inevitable. And just before the consequences fell fully into place, the scene held at its sharpest point, suspended on the edge of the final break. The officers did not waste time. The moment he stepped onto my porch, the report was written, the incident logged, and the charges prepared with a precision that made it clear this was no longer a question of family disagreements. It had become a matter of law. When we walked into the station the next morning, my lawyer handed over the organized stack of evidence she had built from my recordings, my screenshots, and the timestamps of every intrusion. The officer on duty watched the footage in silence, then nodded once, a firm and final gesture that told me everything. There would be no more pretending this was harmless. He was charged with attempted unlawful entry, harassment, and property interference. Each charge landed like a stone dropped into still water, rippling outward an unavoidable consequence. My mother tried to interrupt, insisting he had only come to talk, that he had only acted out of concern, that her daughter had misunderstood everything. Her voice wavered, climbing higher, clinging to explanations that could no longer survive the weight of truth. Then the officer played the audio. My mother urging him to hurry, my mother telling him to check the windows, my mother whispering that I would not be home until later. Her words filled the room, stripped of excuses, impossible to escape. She stopped speaking. Her hands trembled. Her face collapsed into a look I had never seen on her. Not guilt, not sorrow, recognition. She realized she was implicated. She realized this time she could not twist the story into something that made me the problem. It was over. I filed a restraining order against both of them that same afternoon. My lawyer walked me through the paperwork, with a calm assurance that allowed me to breathe fully for the first time in weeks. The court granted the order without hesitation. They were barred from my house, my street, and from contacting me in any form. Any slip, any attempt to approach me would carry consequences they could not charm or shout their way out of. Their attempts to manipulate me became meaningless in a single stroke. Whatever power they thought they held dissolved like dust in rain. News travels fast in a small town. The boyfriend lost his job 3 days later when the charges became public record. His employer did not want the liability. He tried to blame me, of course, accusing me of ruining his life. But his words had no force anymore. My mother walked out of the courthouse beside him, choosing him once again, choosing the path that kept her from facing the truth of what she had done. Watching her walk away hurt in a deep, quiet place, but it also cleared the last remaining fog from my mind. Some choices define people. That was hers. I returned to my house alone and unlocked the door with steady hands. The air inside felt different, as if the walls themselves understood that something heavy had finally been lifted. I sat on the living room floor, the same spot where I had eaten takeout on my first night here, and let the silence settle around me. No one could take this from me now. No one could walk in without permission. No one could claim what I built. The finality was not loud. It was a steady, powerful settling, like a gavel striking wood. Later, as the night softened, I understood something I had always suspected. Betrayal is not rare. It grows quietly in families that smile in public. It sits in kitchens during holidays. It hides behind the word love. And revenge is not always fire or fury. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is paperwork. Sometimes it is the simple act of standing your ground until the people who tried to break you end up with nothing left to take. My story is only one of many.